Hey, old man, what rank did you hold back in the Stone Age? The words cut through the midday noise of the Naval Base mess hall, sharp cold. Petty Officer Jack Reynolds, a young SEAL, stood blocking a small table. Behind him, a few teammates snickered short, dry laughs, the confidence of men accustomed to winning. The old man, Henry Cole, remained seated. A worn jacket, a straight back. He scooped another spoonful and kept eating. He didn't look up. I'm talking to you. This is a military installation. Do you have any identification? The sound in the mess hall slowed. Forks and knives froze mid-air. Eyes glanced toward the table, then away. The old man's silence was not fear, it was a wall. Reynolds stepped closer. The weight of youth and authority pressed into the space. Henry Cole set his spoon down, softly, neatly. He still said nothing. A young SEAL demanding an answer. An old soldier choosing silence. And in just a few minutes, the entire mess hall would freeze when the truth was finally spoken by its rightful name. If you believe that true courage is not found in gunfire, but in the silence of those who have already walked through war, subscribe to brave veteran stories, so together we can preserve the memory, dignity, and reverence owed to our quiet heroes. Reynolds remained where he was. He didn't step back. He didn't leave. His presence itself felt like an order that didn't need to be spoken. Did you hear what I said? His voice slipped away from its earlier mockery, turning dry and sharp. This is a naval base. Civilians don't just walk in here. How did you get inside, Henry? Cole didn't look up. He lifted the spoon to his mouth, ate slowly, evenly, as if the question didn't exist. Reynolds drew in a short breath. Look at me when I'm talking to you. He leaned in slightly. Who are you? What are you doing here? The sound inside the mess hall began to change. Fragmented conversations stopped mid-sentence. Forks and knives slowed, then froze. Some eyes glanced over, then quickly turned away. Others stayed fixed, tense. No one spoke. No one intervened. Henry Cole set the spoon down, softly, without a sound. He lifted his cup and took a small sip of water. His old hand was steady. His back remained straight. His gaze rested on an invisible point ahead. Are you ignoring me? Reynolds sneered. Or do you think staying silent gives you permission to be here? A short laugh broke out behind him. The pressure thickened. Reynolds straightened his voice, shifting into command. Show me your ID, now. A few people in the mess hall recognized that a line had been crossed, but no one spoke up. The silence of the majority became a shield for the one abusing his authority. Henry Cole didn't reach into his pocket. Didn't look for a wallet. Didn't explain himself. He simply set the cup down so gently, the tabletop didn't even tremble. He adjusted his posture. Slow, precise, nothing wasted. That silence was not fear. It was a choice. Reynolds felt something slipping out of his grasp. He was used to getting answers, used to respectful eyes, used to his voice carrying weight. But in front of him sat someone who didn't react. A wall that sent no echo back. You think you're special, Reynolds snapped. I'm talking to you. Henry Cole remained silent. He breathed in, breathed out. A steady rhythm, as if he had grown accustomed to noises far louder than this. As if he had lived long enough to know when words were unnecessary. Reynolds took another half step forward. I'm asking you one last time. Who are you? He stopped and waited. Nothing came. The mess hall fell completely still. The silence spread, growing heavier. A young sailor swallowed hard. A petty officer lowered his eyes to his tray. Everyone felt the same thing. This was going wrong. Reynolds clenched his jaw. Being ignored in front of a crowd was humiliation. Not because the old man had said something, but because he had said nothing at all. That refusal made Reynolds burn. Are you disrespecting me? He barked. You think you're above me? Henry Cole lifted a hand and adjusted his cuff. A small gesture. Exact. He raised his head just slightly, not to meet Reynolds' eyes, only to look level. Then he looked back down. Not a word. The entire room held its breath. Reynolds forced a thin smile. Fine. If you won't speak, I'll speak for you. He pointed toward the worn lapel. What is that thing? Henry Cole didn't react. At that moment, the silence was no longer empty space. It became an accusation. It said, power does not live in loud voices. It said some answers never need to be spoken. Reynolds looked around. The teammates behind him were no longer laughing. Others weren't turning away anymore. Every set of eyes was now on him, waiting to see what he would do next. Henry Cole remained seated, and it was that very stillness that pushed Reynolds to his final edge, where words were no longer enough, and a single small action would send everything past the point of no return. Reynolds didn't wait any longer. He planted his large hand on the table in front of Henry Cole. A decisive touch. No permission. No hesitation. Listen carefully. His voice dropped heavy, sharp. You are going to answer me. Right now. Henry Cole didn't lean back. He didn't look up. He simply remained seated, both hands resting neatly on his tray. That calm unsettled Reynolds. He leaned in closer, crossing the last inch of personal space, his breath pressing in. Who do you think you are, sitting here and saying nothing? Reynolds said. This isn't a public cafeteria. This is a naval base. He lifted his hand and pointed straight at the worn lapel of Henry Cole's jacket. And that thing. His finger stopped on the smoothed metal pin. Why are you wearing some cheap souvenir like that? A laugh broke out behind him. Another SEAL chimed in. Probably bought it at the surplus store outside the gate. The tone was playful. Light, but cutting. Reynolds curled his lip. Or do you think wearing junk like that gets you special treatment? He shook his head. Sorry. There's no room for impersonators here. The mess hall fell completely silent. No whispers. No trays sliding. The people nearby stood frozen, held in place by something unseen. Everyone knew what was happening was wrong, but no one had the courage to step in. Henry Cole still didn't react. His eyes didn't linger on the pin, didn't linger on Reynolds. He looked down at the table as if weighing something far away. Reynolds felt challenged in front of everyone, not by words, but by total refusal. That absolute denial stripped his patience. Fine. Here's how this goes, Reynolds said, his voice turning cold. If you don't cooperate, I'll escort you outside. A SEAL behind him nodded. Just procedure. Reynolds extended his arm a little farther, his hand hovering near the old man's tray. You're a security risk. He spoke slowly, each word deliberate. And I don't have time for this silent act. Henry Cole reached out and slid his tray aside. A small gesture. Final. He sat straighter. He didn't look at Reynolds. He didn't plead. He didn't argue. The silence made the room heavier. Do you hear me? Reynolds growled. I'm giving you an order. A young sailor at a nearby table tightened his grip on his spoon. A petty officer lowered his head further. No one spoke. No one intervened. Not because they agreed, but because they were afraid. Afraid of crossing a man wearing the trident on his chest. Reynolds took a deep breath. I'm escorting you out to verify your identity. He said it flatly. Stand up. Henry Cole didn't stand. That moment lasted only a single breath. But it was enough for Reynolds to feel publicly diminished. Enough to convince him that if he didn't act now, he would lose. I'm not asking again. Reynolds said, his voice hard. This is an order. He glanced once more at the pin. Take that off, Reynolds said. You don't have the right to wear it here. Henry Cole didn't touch his lapel. He didn't shield the pin. He simply placed his hand flat on the table and kept it there. The gesture wasn't resistance. It was refusal without words. Another SEAL stepped forward half a pace. He's not cooperating. His voice was even. Proceed by protocol. Reynolds nodded. Right. Protocol. He reached out and placed his hand on Henry Cole's thin arm. This time there were no extra words. No mockery. Only action. The mess hall held its breath. No one stopped him. No one stepped in. Not because they didn't know right from wrong, but because they knew the cost of speaking up now. Henry Cole remained seated. He didn't pull away. He didn't evade. He didn't resist. That calm made Reynolds' action look even more brutal. And in that moment when a young man's hand closed around an old man's arm, the final boundary was crossed. Not in raised voices, but in the silence of an entire room. Somewhere else in the mess hall, someone could no longer look away. And that decision would send the story down a path no one in that room could have foreseen. Lucas Parker stood at the far end of the mess hall, his hand gripping the metal tray until his knuckles tightened. He hadn't sat down. He had meant to turn away like so many others. but his feet refused to move. Parker saw everything. From the very first remark, from the mocking smile, from the way Reynolds positioned himself in front of the small table as if it were his personal territory. Parker saw the old man sitting there back straight, silent, and he saw how that silence was being crushed inch by inch. In Parker's mind, an old image surfaced. His grandfather, a former Marine, once standing in line at a grocery store, hurried along because his hands shook, called a slow old man. His grandfather hadn't argued. He had simply lowered his head. Parker had stood there, small, not knowing what to do. The feeling returned. Whole. Undiluted. Parker swallowed hard. He saw Reynolds lean closer. Saw the finger jab toward the worn pin. Saw the crooked smile. Saw the eyes turning away. And then he saw the moment that made his chest tighten. Reynolds' hand landed on the old man's arm. Not hard, but unmistakable. Parker knew that was the final line. Not because of pain, but because of humiliation. Once contact was made, it was no longer words. It was power being imposed on a body. Parker looked around. No one moved. No one spoke. Men with more experience than him. Men with higher rank than him. All of them silent. He knew he couldn't step forward. He was just a seaman. Reynolds was a SEAL. Confronting him now would be career suicide. Parker understood that better than anyone. But standing still was also a choice. And that choice made him feel sick. Parker set his tray down. He turned away and walked quickly toward the serving area. His heart hammered. No one noticed. Every eye was fixed on the table. He stopped at the wall-mounted phone. His hand trembled slightly. He knew who he had to call. Not security. Not the duty officer. He needed someone who didn't just understand regulations, but history. He lifted the receiver. Dialed. His breathing quickened. Command Master Chief's office. I need to speak with the Master Chief. Urgently. Parker set his voice low but firm. He's busy. Parker glanced back toward the mess hall. Reynolds was still there. The hand hadn't moved. A SEAL is harassing an elderly man, Parker said quickly. He's being threatened. Report it to the Master-at-Arms. No. Parker said, his voice breaking. Please listen to me. A brief pause. The old man's name Parker swallowed. Henry Cole. The line went silent. Not the silence of being busy, but the silence of recognition. Say that again. Henry. Cole. Parker repeated slowly. He's sitting in the mess hall. A SEAL named Reynolds is holding his arm. A faint sound came through the line, like a chair being shoved back hard. The voice returned low, compressed, stripped of courtesy. Where are you? At the base mess hall. Do not leave. The voice spoke slowly, each word precise. Keep your eyes on him. Do not let him leave that area. Yes, Master Chief. The call ended. Parker set the receiver down. His hands were slick with sweat. He stood still for a moment. Then he turned back. The mess hall was still silent. Reynolds was still there. Henry Cole was still seated. But Parker felt something had changed. Not in the room. Somewhere else. He returned to his spot. Stood. Waited. He didn't know what was about to happen. He only knew that he hadn't looked away. And this time he had chosen differently than he had years ago. Somewhere else on the base, the name Henry Cole had just been spoken, and the gears of authority had begun to turn fast and impossible to stop. On the other end of the line, Master Chief Donovan did not answer right away. The name Henry Cole landed like a heavy object, not because he had never heard it, but because he knew it all too well. The silence lasted longer than a normal pause. There were no unnecessary questions, no cautious confirmations, only a compressed void, as if an entire chapter of history had just been touched. Say that again. Donovan's voice dropped. Henry Cole, Parker repeated. He's in the mess hall. A SEAL is holding his arm. Silence. Heavier this time. No one needed to say another word. Donovan stood up. Not rushed. Not frantic. Just a decisive movement. The people around him recognized it instantly in the way he straightened, in the short breath he released, in the tightening of his jaw. Keep him in sight. Donovan said, his voice cold. Do not let him leave that area. Yes, Master Chief. The line went dead. Donovan did not remain still. He walked straight to his private phone, lifted the receiver, dialed. No long introduction. This is Donovan. I need the base commander. Now. On the other end, the voice lowered immediately. Yes, Master Chief. Donovan waited. He did not pace, he did not speak. When the base commander came on the line, he said simply, There's a situation in the mess hall. It involves Henry Cole. A brief pause. Henry Cole? Yes, Donovan said. And we need to be there. Immediately. Donovan hung up. He turned to the duty officer. Is Admiral Harper leaving the base? Yes, Master Chief. His convoy exited the gate about 10 minutes ago. Donovan nodded. Call them. Have them turn around. Tell them this is a matter of honor. No one questioned him. No one asked for clarification. The way Donovan spoke made every order absolute. Old images surfaced in his mind, not personal memories, but lists of names, reports, stories passed down quietly through generations. Henry Cole was not a name spoken casually. It was a name said in a lowered voice, a name carried with unspoken reverence. Donovan pulled on his cover and stepped out of his office. He did not run. He did not hesitate. Every step was a decision already made. Back in the mess hall, Reynolds had no idea what was unfolding. He only felt time stretching uncomfortably. The eyes around him no longer looked away. They pressed into his back. No words, no gestures, but enough to unsettle him. He looked down at Henry Cole. The old man was still seated. No resistance. No pleading. That silence was no longer provocation. It had become a challenge. Reynolds tightened his grip slightly. Not hard, but deliberate. He needed to end this. Needed to reclaim control. Needed to prove he wasn't being thrown off balance by an old man. Stand up. Reynolds said, his voice low, stripped of mockery. Henry Cole did not stand. Reynolds swallowed. Part of him sensed something was wrong, but arrogance drowned out caution. He'd gone too far to turn back. I'm taking you outside, Reynolds said. Right now. He applied pressure with his hand, made the decision to pull the old man to his feet. In that moment, Reynolds believed he was doing the right thing, that this was just a minor situation, an incident that could be resolved with authority and strength. He didn't know that elsewhere on the base, much larger gears had already begun to turn, not out of anger, but because memory itself had been violated. Henry Cole shifted slightly. He did not resist. He did not comply. Just a slow movement, as if weighing something very old. Reynolds didn't notice. He only knew he had to act. Right now. And when that young hand decided to pull an elderly man upright, the doors of the room began to open, bringing with them people Reynolds never imagined would appear here. The mess hall doors burst open. The sound was sharp, clean, final. No one needed to turn around to know that something had just changed. The base commander entered first. Upright posture. A cold expression. Master Chief Donovan followed close behind. He didn't scan the room. He didn't search. He knew exactly why he was there. Then the third figure appeared. A man in a crisp white uniform. 3 silver stars on his shoulders. A calm face, but eyes that were sharp and deep. Admiral James Harper. The entire mess hall rose at once. Chairs scraped the floor. Bodies snapped to attention by instinct honed over a lifetime. No command was needed. Only one man didn't react in time. Reynolds. He stood frozen. His hand was still on Henry Cole's arm. His mind lagged. 3 stars. Base Commander. Master Chief. Here. Together. Because of one old man, Admiral Harper didn't look around. He walked straight ahead. Each step steady, unhurried, unbroken. Reynolds felt the air around him grow heavy. A cold bead of sweat traced down his spine. He released his grip as if he had touched hot metal. Too late to hide it. Too late to undo it. Admiral Harper stopped in front of the small table. He looked at Henry Cole, then at the arm that had just been released, then at Reynolds. No words were needed. That look alone told Reynolds he had crossed a line that could not be named. The entire room held its breath. Admiral Harper straightened. His heels came together. His right hand rose to his brow. A formal salute. Not for the base commander, not for the Master Chief, but for Henry Cole, Sir. Admiral Harper's voice was clear, deep, resolute. I sincerely apologize for what has just occurred. Henry Cole lifted his head. His eyes met the Vice Admiral's. No surprise, no confusion, just the gaze of a man who had seen too much to be shaken now. We had your name on the guest list, Admiral Harper continued. You should never have been disturbed. The mess hall stood as if nailed to the floor. The word, sir, echoed again inside Reynolds's head. A word he reserved for superiors. A word he would never use for a nameless old man in a mess hall. His legs weakened. Sound seemed to drain from his ears. He no longer registered the room, only a spreading emptiness. The base commander stepped forward half a pace. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence was an unspoken verdict. Master Chief Donovan stood behind Admiral Harper. His eyes rested on Reynolds. Not with anger. Not with contempt. Just the look of a man who had watched the same mistakes repeat themselves across generations. Admiral Harper lowered his salute, his gaze still on Henry Cole. Once again, sir, I am deeply sorry. Henry Cole didn't answer right away. He looked around the mess hall, faces standing rigid eyes, lowered young men witnessing something they had never been taught in any manual. It's all right, he said softly. His voice was old but clear. It's a small matter. Those two words landed heavier than any reprimand. Reynolds stood there. He didn't know whether to salute. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know what to do with his now empty hands. The trident on his chest felt twice as heavy. Admiral Harper turned his head slightly, his eyes sweeping the room. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. I believe it's time everyone here understands who they are standing before, he said. Reynolds heard those words, and for the first time that entire afternoon, he felt fear. Not fear of punishment, but fear of what was about to be spoken. Henry Cole remained seated. Both hands rested on the table, silent. That silence was no longer weakness. It was the center of the room. And before the mess hall could fully exhale after that salute, the truth about the man seated before them was about to be spoken one word at a time. Admiral Harper did not raise his voice. He spoke as if reading a truth that had existed for a very long time. The man before you is Henry Cole. The room held absolute silence. He was a Navy frogman during World War II. A pause. No one moved. Before the name seal existed, before the trident became a symbol, there were men like him, Harper continued. His unit is the foundation you stand on. Reynolds stood frozen. The word foundation struck him square in the chest. There was no way back now. That year, Henry Cole's unit was deployed on a mission that failed, Harper said. Most of the team was killed within the first hour. A breath was held somewhere in the room. He was the only one who survived. Henry Cole remained seated. Both hands rested on the table. No expression. For the next 3 days, he stayed behind. Alone, Harper said. No resupply, no support, no way out. Reynolds swallowed hard. He completed the mission by himself, Harper continued, and he survived. No one dared breathe loudly. For those actions, Henry Cole was awarded the Medal of Honor. A faint murmur rippled through the room, then vanished. Medal of Honor. The words needed no explanation. They stood above every rank in that room. Harper tilted his head, his eyes moving to the small pin on the worn jacket. The pin you just mocked. He paused. That is the original insignia of his unit. Henry Cole blinked once. It was given to him by his team leader, Harper said slowly. Minutes before that man was killed. The room grew heavier. It is not decoration, Harper said. It is a promise. Harper turned toward Reynolds. He didn't raise his voice. Petty Officer Reynolds. Reynolds flinched. Yes, sir. You have just insulted a man that this entire community stands upon, Harper said. And you did so while wearing the trident on your chest. Reynolds did not lift his head. That makes you a disgrace to the very symbol you wear. The words did not need force. Their weight carried them. The base commander stepped forward. Petty Officer Reynolds, you will report to my office immediately after lunch. His voice was cold. There will be disciplinary action. Reynolds nodded. No resistance, no excuses. Admiral Harper turned back to Henry Cole. Sir, I apologize. Henry Cole was silent for a moment. Then he lifted his head. Jim. He spoke the Admiral's first name. The room shifted with quiet shock. Harper straightened slightly. "He's just a boy," Henry Cole said. His voice was rough with age, but clear. "A lot of fire. Not much memory." Reynolds looked up. His eyes were red. "We were all like that once," Henry Cole said. "Everyone thinks they're invincible." He looked at Reynolds. No anger, no contempt. "Give the boy a chance to learn." Harper held the silence. Then he nodded. "I understand." Reynolds trembled slightly. He didn't cry, but his jaw tightened, carrying a shame deeper than any punishment. Henry Cole raised a hand to his lapel and touched the pin lightly. "Don't take it off," he said. "Remember what it cost." Reynolds nodded. A small nod, but a true one. The room was no longer tense. It settled, like the quiet after a storm. No one spoke. There was no need. And when the truth had finally been spoken, what remained was not punishment, but how each person would carry that memory forward. Discipline came swiftly, quietly, without mercy. Reynolds was demoted. His record was reopened. Dry official lines spelled out the charges: overstepping authority, dishonoring service, staining the symbol he had once worn with pride on his chest. He was ordered to relearn the history of his unit, not as a formality, as an obligation. Names filled the pages. Years no one spoke of anymore. Men without photographs on walls. Reynolds read in silence. For the first time, he understood that the trident was not only present-day power. It was the weight of the past. The base instituted a new program, Naval Heritage, mandatory, from the newest recruit to the most senior officer, not to intimidate, but to remember. The first lesson was not about victory. It was about those who never came home, and about a name once mocked in the mess hall. Time passed. A few weeks enough for the wound to settle. Not enough to forget. Reynolds sought out Henry Cole. No uniform, no rank. Just a young man standing before an old man who had lived an entire lifetime of war. He stopped at a respectful distance. Not aggressive, not unsure. Sir Reynolds said quietly, "I came to apologize. No explanations, no blame, no excuses." Henry Cole looked at him. His gaze was calm, not probing, not condemning. He gave a small nod. "Sit down." Reynolds sat, both hands resting on his knees. For the first time, he didn't need to prove anything. "You have 2 ears and 1 mouth," Henry Cole said. "Use them in that proportion." Reynolds nodded. He didn't speak. He listened, truly listened. Not to reply, but to understand. Henry Cole didn't recount victories. He didn't speak of medals. He spoke of friends who had fallen, of names that existed now only in memory, of the small pin on his lapel that carried the weight of an entire team. Reynolds lowered his head. The shame inside him was no longer sharp. It had settled, matured. He understood then that the greatest lesson wasn't in punishment. It was in being given the chance to make things right. They sat there. Few words needed. The silence was different. It wasn't confrontational. It healed. Honor does not come from strength. Not from a loud voice, not from standing above others. Honor comes from remembering whose shoulders you stand on, and from how you treat those who built the path you walk. Reynolds stood and saluted Henry Cole. This time the salute didn't come from regulation. It came from understanding. Henry Cole returned the nod. Nothing more was needed. And the story didn't end in a mess hall. It continued in the way people looked at one another, in the way the young learned when to be silent, in the way memory was passed on without noise. If you believe that true courage is not found in gunfire, but in the silence of those who have already walked through war, please like this video, share it, and subscribe to Brave Veteran Stories so that none of their memories are ever forgotten.